Hi YouTube family. It's been I think long time since I'm online on the YouTube. But let's continue with what I've started. Uh, so now the question I think last I thought I will be discussing is the HLD and the LLD. So let's take the first part of it, that is the HLD. So high level design is more over concepts which you will be encountered when you try for the product based companies, or maybe the companies which actually have their own product. Most of the time it revolves around the system design where if company is having their own product line, most of the product companies have their own products which they support, which they build, and then they release in the market, right? So that type of exposure, when you wanted to encounter in your career, HLD comes into the picture. And not even in the interviews, when you go into that companies already have a structure in build. They have the pages, they have the documentation ready. So each and every development, each and every uh, manipulation in the code require you to go through the documents, requires you to go through the existing design which was previously built. Then you come up with the approach, then you code that approach. But before doing that, most of the teams in the product based companies do the documentation of it, and that documentation is not like the temporary one, or you can have a sentence in a bold letter, and maybe the normal way of talking which we normally do. It specifically states, in terms of a software engineering design, or maybe software engineering terms. um, Previous to coming to this company, I was also in the assumption that okay, it will be an easy thing, or it will be very much like you will not encounter such things in your career, because I came from the software industry where the clients are getting served. So I basically came from the service based industry where we used to do the documentation. Not It's not like that we don't the logs, the things, and we don't go ahead without doing the uh, architectural meetings and all. It is just more over that the focus was on deliverables, and not on improving the existing idea. uh, that was the case. So once you encountered any question or any requirement in most of the normal companies, you come up with the idea, you code that idea, you commit that idea, and your code, if reviewer thinks that you are getting an output, you are having a good line of code, and maybe whatever the according to standards they have set, the code can get merged, and the your um code will be live in some days. But when you go for the product based companies, much of the product based companies take the reviews very seriously, and along with the reviews you have to explain why you have coded some line of a code and what is the approach. I have seen the people who are senior to me, who are much elder, and who has exposure through a lot of bigger companies that I can dream of. And these people come and ask the questions. So here is no seniority or juniority. uh, what, major of the times I similarly, like, I get the question from the opposite teams that okay, what do you think, Akshay? How do you feel this solution can be good, and all the stuff. So even, and also what I feel is, I have encountered one situation where I have given the solution, and majorly that got accepted, because that was the fastest way of doing the things. And also I feel there is another way of doing it, but as the requirement was in the congestion, and it was nearly touching the surface of the code, and we are going through the minimal path of the code. I think that got accepted. And much more, I think when you try to explain the things, you have to have your HLD in your mind. uh, when you have a meetings in the teams, when you pitch your ideas to the code reviewers, or maybe whoever is your branch merger, or whoever is taking care of that module particularly. So that moment you have to have the HLD in your mind specifically, I will say, if you have that documented, that is well and good. If you have that with the terms of a software engineering, that is above average. Like you can explain the things in a much better way, you can have the grasp on the actual scenario, what's going to happen in the production, and you know how the things will flow from one into another. So HLD is much more important when you do the software engineering. Also, I feel LLD comes with the timeline. That means LLD is much over the implementation of the HLD, right? So LLD, you will get time, you know, to implement the things, to experiment the things, to get, you know, whatever you have designed to get into the code. You have to have the breakthroughs. You have to analyze the and condition or condition, how the output is going to flow, how the where the mistakes you have made. You have to debug the code. You have to rewrite the code. You have to rewrite the logic as well, right? But HLD is not like that. HLD is more specific to the broader term. Uh, Now let's take an example of a hotel management system, right? I like you have been seeing much more examples like that on the internet for free of the cost. But uh, what I'm gonna tell you is that first start with the client and server architecture, right? You will think that, okay, client, who is the client in the hotel management? Normal people. Who is gonna serve the, you know, the food is the server, because they are gonna prepare it and they're gonna serve you the food, right? So basic client and server architecture is there. Now how you will be scaling that in a such a way that at a moment, if 100 people are there, you know, you have a capacity, sitting capacity of for 30 people, 40 people, but at a moment if 100 people comes to visit your hotel and to have a food, you know, how you will be scaling that application or scaling that kind of architecture in a such a way that all the requests will go through in a channel and all the people will get satisfied at the end of the day, right? That kind of architecture, that kind of thinking, that kind of you know, attitude, when you show to the interviewer, when you show to the your when you show you in your team, that makes you a much more, you know, all rounder, you know. So when you pitch these kind of things, you know, majority of the software engineering people know these stuffs already. Those who are in the software industry for like 4 years, 5 years, you know, they know the system design very well, inside out most of the time. Uh, Also, I feel people who are at 7 or 8 year of experience and who are working in a good product based companies, maybe at least they are working in a good product based company for 2 or 3 years. They know inside out of the much of the technologies, right? They know, I think 99% they know uh, how, you know, how much you have knowledge about the system design. Once you open your mouth, they will get to know, okay, this guy has done something or not, or he is the faking his experience and all. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, coming to HLD, it's more over the architectural way. You can explain it with the diagrams, you can explain with the flow of the APIs, how the, you know, how the data will flow from one end to another, how the client will give the order, how the waiter will take the order, and how the waiter will serve the lot of many people, how a cook is gonna make the food. If there is one cook, how you can scale that one cook to have a multiple task at one moment of a time. Also, how you will hire the more cooks. Can you make that application in a such a way that, you know, each there is different from the another? That means there is no interaction between a cook, and there is no between the cook and the customer, right? So you can have a waiter in between. Waiter will be taking care of all the flows from one into another, right? How you can have a different services which are gonna talk, right? And these are independent services, right? It is not necessary the customer has to go and ask for the who is gonna cook my food, who is the chef, what is his name, do you have four chef or two chef or five chefs, right? So these kind of particular points you have to explain to the interviewer. And moreover, the HLD is that as I said, it's more on the diagram. With If you specify the class level diagrams, maybe UMLs and all, that is well and good. If you break down the things in a much smaller calibre, right? You know, if you put the DB constraints, also you put you know, probably the DBs with the primary keys, maybe foreign keys, how the relationship will be going on, how you will, you know, break down the each service, you know, in I will say the breaking down, but at the moment you should have a time in your mind, right? So it should not be the bigger solution for any particular problem, because companies start very uh, I will say with a very small application, right? If you see, Uber has started, then I think majorly the companies who started in 2010, 2011, maybe that era, 2015 era, right? They started with the monolithic architecture. Now they have moved to the microservices architecture. Even many companies still are serving in the monolithic. Um, I feel both have a disadvantage and the advantage, and the vice versa. As like you can go on and on talking about the advantage of one and disadvantage of other, advantage of other and disadvantage of one, right? But my point is not uh, giving you the idea of what is more beneficial for your project. My point is find the optimal solution, right? If you have a less time, if you have a less budget, I think monolithic is the best option, because you can track down the things very finely. If something goes wrong, you will get to know because of the flow of the programs. It's more over the debugging the one application at a moment, right? If you have microservices, then you will have to have different DBs different microservices communicating with each other. Something you have to take care is the load balancing and all. Majority of the things you have to have DBs in place which are not having the race conditions in between. So what I feel is, once you start with examples, I think that is the best way to go ahead, with the examples of, let's say I have hotel management system. So that kind of example, right? You will have uh, nowadays we have a, TikTok is there, Tinder is there. We have a file systems, Gmail, then we have emails. uh, we have a file system like the G Drive. We have also we have a networking architecture like the FileZilla and all, right? We have a torrent. We have a peer-to-peer architecture. Also, we have I am working on the payments, so payments architecture, right? So all majorly, depends upon the field you wanted to explore. But what I feel is the basic minimum requirement is the client server architecture, and above that, I think one layer above the client and server. That means finding a minimum, you know I think, so let's say if you take the example, as I said, the hotel management, right? So interviewer is asking maybe 10 customer, 20 customer, right? But if you able to scale it at least 100 customer or 20 200 customers, right? That is sufficient. You don't have to have the millions of people coming, and so that kind of a scale you cannot actually imagine, because it's not that one application is taking care of the millions of requests at one moment. The application itself is replicated multiple times on the servers. That way only, I think the multiple millions services are getting handled, multiple services are getting tackled. So these are like that concepts which flows from like multi architecture way, like there is no end to it, right? Because nowadays the cloud is there. You can have any instance of a application on the cloud which are serving each request, and that is true with the highest of the hardware implemented. The Amazon has a high, I think there are like 32 GB RAM, 64 GB RAM kind of architecture they can build. And that is also on click, so you don't have to worry about the the hardware at this moment of a time. But at least you should have a knowledge. So once the you get into the job, if you ask to do something, ask to pitch your ideas to the elder, maybe programmer and all, you at least you have to have the basic understanding what's going on, how the flow should be, how the thing should go ahead. And there is not much much to explore, I will say. You have a concepts ready. I think there is beautiful channel from the Gaurav Sen. He has tackled this with, I think, more than 30 videos in the row. So even if you can go through this 30 videos, and each video is, I think, probably 10 minutes max, right? So 30 videos will take you around 300 minutes maximum, right? And in a 1 week also you can complete that, maybe 1 week or 2 week maximum, right? If you wanted to have the concentration, and you are noting down the things very particularly. So I think that channel will give you a fair idea of what's the system design is, how to approach that. And actually, the Gaurav Sen has explained in a beautiful way of a high level design, right? So he has have a diagrammatic way of representation. He has a board, black and white board, and all. So that is the way to go. He also tried, his level best. See, system design is not a particular way to. There is no particular way to answer it, right? And given the HLD, also there is no particular way, right? My answer will differ from the next person. Next person's answer will be different from the interviewer. Interviewer's answer will be different from his teammate or maybe colleague or maybe the senior person in his company, right? So there is no specific way, but at least we should try to get 90% of the solution right, 95% of the solution right. As I said, from 10 people you can scale it to the 200 people, right? So that scalability you should understand, right? So once you understand that scalability, once you understand the corner cases of that scalability, I think that's more than enough. Probably this will apply to the SDA1, SDA2, SDA3 people. When you move to the MTS or some staff engineering positions and all, I think you should be very clear with the what you're saying. Actually, you should be. So there is no 90-95% rule. Probably you should have that confidence build that you can 99% you should be acing the plate, acing the diagrammatic way of HLD. You can come up with the corner cases as well. You can tackle any question at the moment when the interview is going to ask that one. So what I'm planning next is to have probably the working session of the HLDs and the LLDs. Okay, one more video will be coming on the LLDs. Stay tuned for it. I know I'm very late about it, like going on the YouTube and taking the video, making a video and all. I feel that I'm having a very less time for it, but surely I will find the time for the LLD. And going forward, I think the implementation of the steps which I'm talking will lead you to the broader light, and as I said, this will be the channel which um, will be very specific to the software engineering, and there will be no other thing is gonna happen. And probably what I'm saying is that stays I think the moreover, the software engineering terms, the small, I know there is a lot of knowledge on the YouTube. There are roadmaps, there are coding competitions, there are hackathons, there are LLDs, HLDs, various videos are there. But my point of view is, will be applied to the people who are from 1 year experience to the maybe 6 or 7 years or maybe maximum 8 years of experience. Above that level, as I said, MTS, staff engineer, and all people, they are at ultimate level, that has to be built with the experience, right? But if you are 1 year experience guy, if you're 2 years experience guy, I think the initial grunt you need to tackle the interview will be coming from these videos. Stay tuned. Hope we will meet soon. Bye.